Hi there, everybody. Thank you for your time. My name is Gregory Weissman, and I'm with the Office of Grants Management. This is an information session for the fiscal year 26 food aggregation grant. I'm holding this information session on Thursday, February 12th. The link to this a recording of this information session is in the notice of funding opportunity, which is published on the Office of Grants Management website and shared by OFSR. I'm joined by my colleagues Heather and Beth from the Office of Food Systems Resilience. They're going to be jumping in and out of the presentation, but you can access this presentation at any time. This is an overview. Well, we're going to get to the agenda. The information session agenda is what we're going to talk about today, and basically we are going to provide an overview of the Office of Food Systems Resilience and the food aggregation program background. We're going to provide an overview of the program details. I'm going to provide a brief walkthrough of the UNA application platform, and then we're going to open it up for participant questions. If you are online right now and live, please put your questions in the Q&A box during the presentation and we will get to them. If you are watching this at a later date, if you're watching the recording or anything, do not hesitate to reach out with questions, and we can publish those questions at a later date, but please don't hesitate to contact myself. My email is throughout this presentation, or OFSR, to ask any questions. There's no such thing as a bad question. The slide deck will also be posted in the same location for your reference at a later date. The grant program page, again, this is for stage 1 of 2. The grant program page for stage 1 is linked on this slide, and it is also linked in the notice of funding opportunity. And if you have started an application or would like to create an account in UNA, which is our grants interface, the link for that is here as well, but the resources are also elsewhere throughout the presentation. For the next couple slides, I'm going to pass it off to my colleague Heather for a background on OFSR overall and specifically the food aggregation program.
Thank you, Greg. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Heather Bruskin. I'm the director of the county's Office of Food Systems Resilience. So if you're not familiar with the work that we do, we were created building on the lessons learned from COVID, that we rely on a fragile supply chain to support food access in our community, and that over 30% of our residents experience food insecurity. Though economic accessibility will not be the only challenge that we will face in the future when it comes to feeding Montgomery County's population. And so we need to build the resilience of our supply chain so that we can be stronger for future emergencies. And so our office stewards the county's policies and investments related to food and brings a systems-based and strategic perspective to that work. Next slide, please. So we have a variety of legislatively mandated priorities, and certainly creating economic opportunity for our county's food producers and building, again, a more resilient supply chain are a big part of that. So in all of the investments that we make, even those related to feeding our residents today, we make sure that we create opportunities for those investments to also support our strength for the future. And so this grant aggregation opportunity is a unique approach to that for investing in the infrastructure that we need to support accessibility of new markets for local producers. Please. And so I think anyone who finds their way to this info session already knows what the challenges and opportunities are related to growing our economic opportunities for local food producers and connecting larger institutions with products from smaller producers that are, because our institutional sources are really reliant on large global supplies because they're easier to come by, and those are existing supply chain networks that they can easily tap into through their procurement. So we have an increasing number of policies that are in place, including for the state of Maryland institutions, that are incentivizing these agencies to source 20% of their food from certified Maryland producers. Unfortunately, only about 1% of all of the institutions are being purchased from local sources. And so they're recognizing that a big challenge is that a lot of these institutions don't know where to buy the local products from, or that the volumes that are available from local producers are not sufficient to meet their demands as hospitals or healthcare providers and educational institutions. And so aggregators are needed to source smaller volumes of product from a wide variety of producers to then be able to meet the needs of these larger scale buyers. And so we're also seeing the Maryland State Department of Education creating mechanisms to encourage local education associations, all the school districts across the state, to be buying a larger percentage of their products as well. So we know that we need greater aggregation capacity to do this. There have been feasibility studies in pretty much every jurisdiction around Montgomery County, and Montgomery County itself did its own food hub study in 2015 and determined that there is greater need for this connective tissue between producers and institutional buyers. And so this grant is in place to really hopefully bridge that gap. And we know that typically they've taken larger scale investments, and like any business, if we want this infrastructure and this service to be in place in Montgomery County, we need to invest resources to make it an achievable and economically feasible investment for whatever operator chooses to step into this role. And so next slide, please. You can see here the three-pronged approach that we've been taking, building on the recommendations of the 2015 Food Hub study, as well as those from best practices nationally and all the regional feasibility studies, is that it needs to be a simultaneously scaled three-pronged approach to build the resilience in our supply chain. First, we need to increase local food production capacity, and our office has been making investments in this work through programs like the Farm to Food Bank Collaborative Funding Agreement and other infrastructure grants that have built the capacity of our food producers here locally. We need to grow the market demand, and so the county itself already buys about $1 million of product a year directly from local farms through the Farm to Food Bank program, Community Farm Share, and other partnerships where we buy the product and then redistribute that through the food assistance network here in county. But the reality is county dollars can only go and scale so far. And so we need to bring other larger scale buyers to the table in buying these products so that our farms and food producing businesses have the have other demand that allows them to grow more product and scale their production. And so this is aimed not just at Montgomery County producers, but there are a growing number of smaller producers across the region, as well as a growing number of institutions across the region as well. And so we hope that by Montgomery County stepping into this gap, we will lift the economic sustainability of our local supply chain throughout the DMV. Next slide, please. And so you can see here that there is a lot of research that has been done that recommends this investment, including the Climate Action Plan and the High Road Economic Inclusion Plan. When we look at our county's climate priorities, supporting local food production is a critically important piece of that, reducing the climate footprint and the carbon footprint of the food that we're consuming here. And we're investing in a circular economy. MARBITCO is an entity that partners with the state to provide investments in not just our food production, but also aggregation and infrastructure investments in the supply chain overall. And so this grant is leveraging a $300,000 grant that was received by Montgomery County from MARBITCO that was through their local the public sector food aggregation grant program, which was available only to local jurisdictions to unlock a larger award based on funding that's available specifically for this type of infrastructure. Next slide, please. And And Greg, did you want me to do this one?
I can just jump in and then hand it back to you, but essentially the total funding available for year one is 550,000. And that is the maximum. Final award amount may be lower than that. The performance period is listed here. It's a 4-year performance period, but that 550,000 is just meant for year one. So additional funding amounts will be available for those subsequent 3 years as more council appropriations are made and as we move along in the calendar. The link to apply is repeated here with the application opening date of February 3rd and the application deadline of February 20th at 11:59 p.m. The application portal will close then. So if you have questions, if you're trying to log on to the system asking at 11:58 p.m. on February 20th, it will be difficult to address that. So please, if you have questions, ask those sooner rather than later, and I'll pass it back to Heather for the next slide.
Great, thank you, Greg. And so as Greg shared, the grant funds, and so this is all outlined in NOFO, the award is a combination over the entire performance period of funds for build out specifically, funds for operations, and so that can take a much wider interpretation of what's needed, whether it's staffing or additional build out costs or other types of consulting to get the business established, and then followed by commitments of purchases from this facility, because what we've consistently heard from aggregators nationwide is that it's not just the cost of establishing the facility that is the uncertainty in the project, but it's rather the economic viability and its long-term success that's needed through making sure that they have access to sales that is a key part of long-term success as well. And so I think I've already shared some information about this, and this is already outlined in the NOFO, but the funding priorities again are construction costs. So this would be build out of a property. It can be retrofitting or potentially new construction. Again, the second piece is operational costs, and so these will be defined by the applicant in the proposal of what those would be needed, recognizing that each applicant brings existing resources and capacity. So the holes that would need to be filled with grant funds are unique to each application and should be defined in the proposal. And then the third piece is those guaranteed purchases of Montgomery County products, specifically by the government for a wide variety of programs, but specifically focusing on food security programs that are already established in OFSR's budget, though certainly other institutions, both inside the county and around the state, will likely be excited to purchase products from this facility as well. And so the structure is, again, based on appropriation and successful performance, and grant compliance overall by the grantee is $550,000 in year one. Year two, $500,000. That's a balance of grant funding and committed purchases, and years 3 and 4 being exclusively those committed purchases. There are matching requirements, recognizing that these are expensive projects and the grant funds will not be sufficient to cover all of the anticipated costs. And we want to make sure that our grant partner is also invested in the success and long-term effectiveness of this facility. And so part of the match can be in kind, but that can be no more than 20% of the match. And so we're looking for 50% match total in and so happy to answer any specific questions that people have. So again, as Greg noted, please feel free to put questions that you have in the Q&A section of the live event. But this is designed for experienced operators with both past relationships buying from or operating as a small farm, but also connecting those products to institutional buyers. And so We know that that is a special niche expertise, but it's important to both have those relationships with smaller table crop farms as well as with institutional buyers. And so those are important pieces. We're looking ideally for relationships in Montgomery County, Maryland, and the Mid-Atlantic. I think it's important to note that Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments in December launched a local food procurement challenge. And so we anticipate that coming out of that will be growing commitments from DMV-wide institutions to source more product locally. And so around the time that those incentivized procurement commitments from DMV institutions will be in place, will be around the same time that this aggregator project hopefully will go online to start connecting to those sales opportunities. Next slide, please. And so just want to make sure that everyone recognizes that there are some specific guidance in the NOFO related to the grantee meeting at least $1 million in gross annual revenue from food sales within the past 3 years. There are requirements and some specifics around the types of small farm relationships that are in place, ideally both from GAP and non-GAP certified farms, and outlining in phase 1 in that response what types of GAP certifications are in those existing relationships, and also the capacity to bring on new partners that are members of the Chesapeake Local Farm and Fish Certified Producer Program within the first 2 years, and ideally 20 over the total performance period. Montgomery County has one of the most diverse, most diverse communities in the country. And so the dietary preferences of our residents is no less diverse. And so also familiarity and fluency, both with the types of culturally specific products that are of interest to regional buyers, as well as experience sourcing those products will be preferred as well. And the final overview of the eligibility that we're looking for is administrative capacity in addition to the experience. And so this first phase 1 is really looking at the eligibility of the applicant for this type of for this grant program. We don't want to ask people to take a lot of time putting together an application in phase 2 if it's not an alignment with the eligibility criteria. And so this first phase will be quick because it's primarily just making sure that the applicant meets the eligibility criteria. And then the phase 2 will be a longer, more involved application step. And so the last piece is just in addition to the sales relationships, both buying and selling, we also want to make sure that the grantee has experience with infrastructure development so that there is strong performance history with managing a project like this one.
Thank you, Heather. I can take it from here. And again, all of that information that Heather presented is located in the notice of funding opportunity, word for word. So if you have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. But this is just an overview of information that is already accessible to applicants. So Heather very kindly reviewed the grant program specific eligibility requirements. The next 2 slides are on county eligibility requirements. These are not related to any specific program, but are county-wide, and applicants should ensure that these are in place even before starting on the application, if they can. But the organization should be currently registered and in good standing with the Maryland State Department of Assessments and Taxation. This is a common requirement in all Montgomery County grant programs. The organization's principal place of business must be located in Montgomery County. If a national or regional organization, it must have a location within the county. All activities and expenditures under this program must be provided in the county or exclusively for Montgomery County residents. And the following 3 requirements are necessary for successful applications. For stage 1, you are only you are not completing any project scope or project budget, but these requirements are required for every single Montgomery County application process. So anytime you upload, anytime you submit an application, these are what we are expecting applicants to adhere to. If you are a current county grant or contract award winner, you must be current on all reporting obligations for other awards, and those reports must reflect substantial progress towards the goals of that specific program. The proposed expenses must be for a new activity, and for other county grant programs, grant funding cannot be used for the following purchases, which are listed here. And again, these are all repeated in the NOFO. For submission guidelines, and we're going to go over what the specific submission looks like, but they must come through the UNA application, the grant application portal, which is why I encourage applicants sooner rather than later to work out any technical issues by creating an account now and trying to access the application now rather than on the last day. If it's the final date of the application window and you submit via email, those are not, that will not be accepted. So please try now to access the application via UNA. The applications must be fully submitted online by Friday, February 20th at 11:59 p.m. and applicants requesting an American with Disabilities Act accommodation should contact the Office of Grants Management to discuss alternative submission options. If you have any questions about UNA, the platform, the grant program requirements, or the county eligibility requirements, please do not wait to reach out for questions. This is a shorter application window than usual, so as this is a stage 1 and a shorter application, so please reach out sooner rather than later. In terms of application tasks, there's applicant information, which is just basic organizational contact info and supporting documentation. The stage 1 questionnaire, this is the crux of the stage 1 application, which has project data and narrative questions directly related to the grant program eligibility criteria. We are not asking applicants to answer any questions that are outside the scope of the grant program eligibility criteria. They are directly related to those criteria. So if you are curious as to what the application looks like, you can either log in, or if you want to prepare your materials, look at the notice of funding opportunity for the grant program eligibility criteria. And the final screen is the applicant background, which is optional. This has to do with the organization size and leadership demographics. This data collected will never be seen by the review committees or used for awarding. This is just for OGM data purposes. And again, full task requirements and guidance on this program for stage 1 are located on the program page and in the notice of funding opportunity. As part of your application, there will be ethics questions, which are, does your organization employ current employees or contractors of the Montgomery County government? Does your organization's board of directors include current employees or contractors of county government? If answering yes to either of these questions, that does not exclude your organization from being eligible to apply, but we just do have to know that information ahead of time. Montgomery College, MCPS, and WorkSource Montgomery do not count as Montgomery County government employees for the purpose of this grant program. If you're not sure, please do not hesitate to contact OGM for any questions. Here are some other required preparations. Make sure you register and create a profile on the UNA platform. Make sure you're in good standing with SSTAT. If you're not in good standing, we will not be able to move forward with your application. Full stop. That is a red line requirement. Please register with the Montgomery County Central Vendor Registration System. This is how we process payments, and if you are not registered, we will not be able to process an award. So please register, or make sure your current registration is correct and accurate in terms of your current address. And this is a new requirement, but please ensure your organization has a current standing with the Maryland Secretary of State's one-stop charity database. This is a new requirement related to increased oversight at the federal level for county programs nationwide. And we want all of our If you are qualified as a charity by the state of Maryland, you need to have a current standing on this database. That is out of the county's control. The same thing with SSTAT. We do not control how those classifications are administered. So if you are not in good standing with either one of those state boards, please contact them directly. In terms of the review process for stage 1, it's pretty straightforward. There is an Office of Grants Management administrative review. This is just checking SSTAT. This is checking those Montgomery County eligibility requirements. If minor errors are found, if your SSTAT number is off by a little bit, we will give applicants a brief window to resolve the issue. But if it's a major issue, if you're not in good standing, that cannot be resolved in just 2 business days. So I encourage you to check those statuses now. And organizations and applications that do not meet these requirements will be disqualified and not even passed along to the next stage. In terms of programmatic eligibility review, this is going to be based on the stage 1 questionnaire, and this will be directly tied to the grant program eligibility requirements cited in the NOFO, and this will ensure that all submitted applications are within the intended scope of the grant program. Organizations that successfully pass these 2 stages will move on to stage 2. So scoring for stage 1, it's just a simple scoring based on the grant program eligibility requirements. There's no budget required at this stage. There's no nuance to the review. It's pretty straightforward based against the eligibility requirements. And the tentative, keyword on tentative, but the tentative timeline for stage 2 is we hope to launch Friday, March 20th, and then the application will be about a month long with a tentative closing date of Friday, April 17th, give or take a couple of days if we launch later or earlier. But please monitor your emails and the grant program page for updates. Stage 2 will have a separate application program page and a separate application because it will be much more complicated. In terms of award notifications, for those applications that go beyond stage 1, they will receive an email roughly 1 month after the stage 1 application deadline, inviting them to apply for stage 2. 1 award offer will be extended to the successful grantee roughly 1 month after the stage 2 application deadline, so around middle of May. The grant agreement will contain the final amount awarded for year 1, any funding restrictions, programmatic, administrative, and policy requirements, reporting requirements, and payment terms. These will all be listed between the stage 1 and stage 2 NOFOs. And stage 2 applications and reporting requirements will be included in the stage 2 NOFO. So if you're wondering what that application will require, that will be listed in the notice of funding opportunity, which will come out either before or on the same day that the application is open. Just some general recommendations. Please read the guidelines and instructions in the NOFO very carefully. Develop and coordinate and finalize your application offline and then upload all materials into the application. That is more applicable for stage 2, as stage 1 is just answering questions within the application. If you are uploading anything, PDF is preferred. And the application platform cannot read MAC formatted documents like pages, numbers, and keynote. So we will have to go back to grantees and ask them to resubmit, causing delays and maybe causing you to miss a deadline if we're up against a time crunch. The next couple slides are going to be on UNA. This is a new program rolled out this year, or maybe last year. I'm new to the county, but last year for the Office of Grants Management. This is our grant portal application, which took the place of SM Apply. You must first create an application profile using the link on this slide. UNA has developed lots of resources with screenshots, exactly how to do that, how to log in, how to submit your application. More than one person from your organization can work on an application simultaneously. You can transfer ownership of an application to someone else. All of those steps are detailed in the resources provided. If you have any questions, please reach out, but please look at the resources first and please do so in a timely manner so you are not doing this up against the application deadline. Your first step should be to open this link and click on create an account. And I'm not going to walk you through the step-by-step to create an account, but it's pretty simple. You're going to get a confirmation email. And you're going to create a password, and we've all signed up for 1,000 websites in our lives. This one is no different in terms of the verification required. But what you're going to log into when you go back to that to log in is the portal, not the grants network. The portal login is where you will go to start and access your application. In terms of the program page that is linked on this slide, once you go there, you click on apply. It will be where the red box is above the blue colored sections. You must be logged in to your UNA account before accessing this. So I recommend in one tab, once you've created your account, you log into UNA, you create your account, you're logged in, and then in a separate tab, click on this link and then click on apply. If you try to click apply when you are not logged in, it will just take you to the login screen. It will not take you to the program screen. So please log in first and then click apply. Once you are in, you will be able to add a team member. So if more than one person from your organization wants to work on an application, they can. That person will get an email like the one on this slide where they will have to create their own account. But then once they log in, the application that is ongoing will be accessible in their award profile under My Applications. There are many resources created by UNA to assist with this, but if you need support from the Office of Grants Management or OFSR, there are contacts listed here. These are links for the guides to download. And if there are questions that I cannot answer, that OFSR cannot answer, there's an opportunity to contact UNA itself. This is more for technical interface questions. They are usually very responsive within 24 hours, but again, this is the reason why I ask applicants to prepare ahead of time and not submit materials the day before the deadline, as there is always technical snags with every system. So please get out ahead of it and start as soon as possible. If you have further questions, please reach out to myself at grants@montgomerycountymd.gov or the OFSR office at the emails listed in the notice of funding opportunity. I also have linked the OGM website here where the no phone program page are linked, as well as the grants online application platform to create an account and access your application. Thank you everybody for your time. If there are any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Let's see, I see some questions in the chat. I'll try to answer now. Heather, one question is, how will MoCo Farms compete with this food hub?
Yes, so I'm trying to put questions, I put some answers in the Q&A already.
Okay.
The intention is not that MoCo Farms are competing with this food hub, but rather that MoCo Farms can work with this food hub to access new markets. And so to the best of our research and knowledge, there are very few opportunities for smaller producers, including table crop farms in Montgomery County, to connect to sales with institutions at the state and regional level. And so we're seeing, for example, in addition to all the state policies that are in place in Maryland, the DC school system, it looks like, are we paused?
No, I just stopped sharing my screen, but we're still live.
Oh, okay, sorry. There are increases in demand for products, and currently it is difficult for smaller producers to tap into those channels on their own. And so by aggregating, it will create new sales channels and not create competition for existing relationships. And does the applicant have to have a current business location in the county? Yeah. So currently, no. I'm sorry. I thought that there was a reply.
No, there was, and it didn't get carried over, but I just put the reply and made it public. Yeah. The organization's, sorry, go on, Heather.
At the time of application, that does not need to be the case, but the location that is funded by this grant does need to be in Montgomery County.
I'm gonna type that in so that it's registered in our Q&A that we published.
And I feel like there had been another question that we asked.
There was a typo that was submitted as a separate question that is not applicable.
Yes.
But sorry, go on.
Oh, I see. The only other thing that I think I'd like to make sure everybody takes note of in the NOFO is that the intention here is for the county to be a supportive partner in the success of this initiative. And so if, for example, there is a business that is looking to get established here in Montgomery County, we would be connective tissue and supportive partner in connecting with the business development partners that are here in Montgomery County doing economic development work and supporting new businesses taking root here. And so just want to make sure that everybody knows that the goal is for this to be successful and have its intended impact. And so again, it's creating new market channels, not with the intention of replacing existing ones, and supporting the accessibility of local businesses to these sales opportunities that with individual volume are unlikely to be met. And so our hope is also that this will bring and incentivize establishment of other processing capacities or other related businesses to the region as well. Hopefully that information is helpful, and we're eager to answer any questions that come up.
What pricing is going to be used? Local Jessup wholesale prices?
That is to be determined based on how that would be something that will be addressed by the applicant in their phase 2 application. And so we are not establishing required pricing structures necessarily, but that's something that will be determined as the process continues.
Great, thank you. I'm not seeing any more questions at this time. Again, you can always reach out to myself or Heather for additional questions. We can leave this open for a little bit if more questions come in, but that is the end of the plan presentation. So if you have more questions, throw them in the chat, but if not, thank you for your time.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Greg, and to the Office of Grants Management for your partnership in bringing this opportunity forward.
Heather, there's another question that says, where will the food banks get their local produce?
Thank you, Greg. I can't speak for all of the food banks, but I do know that one of the greatest challenges that has been experienced recently is a lot of the local food purchasing agreement funds that were coming from the federal government have ended, and so that has created some challenges. And so, to what extent the entities that were using those dollars to source locally, what will happen there? I can't speak to that, but I do know that the Farm to Food Bank program is that contract is currently held by Manna Food Center, and the community farm share contract that is under OFSR as well. And those are specifically for buying product from Montgomery County farms and redistributing that through the Food Assistance Network. And as I've already outlined in the in some of the responses, obviously every year funds are appropriated independently, so I can't speak to next fiscal year, but those programs have always been held up as successful and celebrated partnerships with our county farms. So, so I know that there is a lot of interest in seeing those collaborations continue. And Greg, I'll just reiterate for anybody who might still be on, this is intended to not compete with any of the existing programs or supplant those funds, but rather create opportunities for local farms to connect to larger scale markets because unfortunately county funds are limited and can't be scaled infinitely. And so we need to, in order to create additional volume for additional sales opportunities for our farms, we need to create infrastructure that will help make those connections. So this, the Farm to Food Bank program is also under OFSR, and so we obviously want to steward both of those initiatives to long-term success.
Hi there, everybody. Thank you for staying on. This presentation started at 12 p.m. and so I'm going to close the room now. I'm going to post a link to this presentation that includes a recording as well as the slides on the OGM website later today or tomorrow whenever the link is made. Please let me know if you have any questions via the grants inbox, and thank you for your time.